Too naked to hide. Chapter 6. The Sound of Life and Doors Closed. If you like it, please subscribe and share. Check also my website www.toonaked.me. The computer was on. The screensaver lit up a sailboat he could never afford, especially now, with clients constantly defaulting their payments and a firm that continued to pile up expenses month after month like an infernal machine. It suddenly came to his mind that he forgot to ask Giovanna what her father wanted from him. Unrevealing the cogs of the startlingly rapid mechanism of the mind, he thought, in order, of his father and all the things he could have learned from him if he had lived longer, of the day of his funeral, of when him and his mother had returned back home and had sat at the kitchen table. He had tried to make some space on the table, which surface was pointlessly taken up by a number of jars, a fruit stand, a silver sugar dish, a box of cookies still sealed, and another box open, salt shaker, and a horn of mismatched objects that sailed back and forth daily over that small table. Having the kitchen table cluttered with everything imaginable was not a fact that depended on the particular moment, but an unknowing habit of his mother he had never been able to stand. He had asked her then, "And now, what do we do?" "Oh, nothing. You're 18, you have your diploma. You'll go on to college and then you'll join your father's practice. That's it." Then she had gotten up. Her slender figure stood up, lean and straight, as if she had swallowed a sword, wool, which prevented her from bending. She had always been like that, his mother. For years, she had only worn twin sets, with their interwoven aura of sensible upmarket elegance, adorned by the ever-present pearl choker. Her hair was always short, chiseled in the same exact haircut, short at the base, with sprouting blonde curls cascading around her spacious forehead. Her jaws were always clenched, resolute, unwavering, leaving no room for mistakes or second thoughts. She must have been the terror of every student in her classes, or maybe not. Who knows? For years her mother had been a silent warrior at his father's side, backing him with conviction, never challenging his indications, which covered everything. Wherever it was the decision to head every God-given weekend to go to the seaside, even in the winter, or his directions on how to decorate the house in functions of the guests or the parties that were to be thrown, or forcing Jacopo to keep up his long hours of competitive swimming training, or waiting patiently for his father's return even when he was late, with his empty stomach churning gastric acid, because we can't have supper before Dad comes home. The day of his funeral, his mother didn't shed a single tear. Jacopo watched her, admiring her sheer willpower. He, who had just turned 19 and was now to be a man, amidst a church crowded with people, some crying genuine tears. He, keeping close to his mother, as always upright and poised. He wanted to cry too, and let the surge of tears flooding his eyes run freely down. But he wore sunglasses, and nobody would ever see those tears quivering in his eyes like a tidal wave trying to break the levee. He could feel them pale, clear, swelling, deep, clouding the altar, and muffling the words of the priest, standing before him in his purple vestments, his warm voice infused with empathy, surrounded by the pungent smell of incense and flowers. He was to be a man, and could not cry. So he swallowed the tears, dragging them back through his throat. But they had found a way out through his nose, and he had no tissues on him. He looked on, besieged by the feeling of unbearable shame, until his mother, without looking at him, her eyes fixed to the altar, had cautiously opened her handbag and pulled out a handkerchief, handing it to him. Jacopo accepted it gratefully and rapidly wiped his nostrils without blowing, for nobody had to know he was crying. Back from the funeral, while he sat at the kitchen table trying to figure out what would happen now that he was 18 and a man, she, calm and firm, had walked to the stove and made a coffee with the mocha. No other words but that sentence. That was all she said. "Oh, nothing. You're 18. You have your diploma. You'll go on to college and then you'll join your father's practice. That's it." For the first time, he had the feeling they were alone, really alone, just him and his mother, and nobody else in the world. Now, sitting in his revolving leather chair, he rubbed his face, stretched his legs, and leaned against the backrest. He then remembered he was supposed to call his mother, call the repair guy to fix his washing machine, which had broken down 2 days prior, that he needed to pay the repair guy, and that piece of shit lawyer, Rossini, still hadn't replied to the fax that was sent the night before, and that he needed to go get a haircut that he could have done with Mattia if Giovanna hadn't already taken him on Saturday, that Giovanna has just lied to his face and she was definitely having an affair with someone, the slut, he thought. And then he came to his mind it was Wednesday. She wasn't going to be logged on to talk online, and that one of her bike wheels was a bit low. That today Pia, the cleaning lady, would be at its place, and he forgot to ask her to change the sheets. His mother was still alone in Albarella, and it was at least 4 days that she didn't answer her phone. He again rubbed his face, took his tie with 2 fingers right below the knot, smoothed it to the tip, lifted it up and let it fall, then took some papers off the desk and tried to focus on reading. "So, what's going on?" She was still out of breath for running up the stairs, with that urgency she had to move, live, breathe, laugh, to never stay still. She had taken off her wedge and thrown them on the floor, letting them tumble under the bookshelves. The shoes had landed with a thud on the carpet. One oscillating a bit before falling on one side. They were nice shoes, but he noticed the wheels were a bit worn out. She had flung herself on the couch by his side, taking off earrings, ring, jacket, and iPod, gathering everything in one hand. Then she had gotten up and placed everything on the table. She had then returned to the couch for a second, to then get up again, kneel by the stereo, and turn it on. While she turned the radio on, he saw her heels peeking out of the skirt, round, soft, smooth, and pink. Jacopo slouched on the sofa, She got up, satisfied. The music was filling the room with a weightless stream of notes. Then she sat down beside him, who was waiting for her on the couch. She leaned her head on his shoulder and repeated the question. "So, what's going on?" He had lifted his right hand, wrapping it round her shoulders, and placed his hand before her radiant face. His hand was closed in a fist, and as he started to talk, he opened one finger at a time, beginning this with thumb. "Well, there's a number of reasons. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Should I go on?" She had taken his hand and pulled it closer to her face, kissing his palm. "Come on, just tell me." And he had started to tell her about the phone call he'd had with Giovanna, about the children, his work. And at that moment, everything seemed so easy to handle, so simple to solve, with her sitting by his side, emanating a delicate chant of life. Avocado, I'm sorry to disturb you. How can a single day hold so much shit all by itself? Chiara had poked her head in through the door, anxious and frail, as if oddly determined not to budge from the spot. I'm sorry, Avocado, to disturb you, but if you are to be in Monselice at noon, maybe, I don't know, maybe, Avocado, you changed your mind in the meantime, but since it's 11:30, I was thinking that you better go. He looked at her with a blank stare. She glanced again at her wristwatch. Yes, it's in fact 11:30, and yes, Avocado, it's in fact 11:30, and the sentence remained suspended, mid-air, a vapid statement without a conclusion. The words she said, too, had often no conclusion. They stopped short in her throat, while he looked at her and waited patiently the end of the sentence. She would look around, take a breath and swallow, and in the meantime her hands would be swirling round, dancing one around the other, as if trying to prod the kegs of a wheel that got stuck. When she would realize that he was looking at her and smiling, fascinated by her hands and by what seemed like a state of perpetual motion, so she would stop, her hands slowly landing along her thighs, and she would sit there, still, to then leap up again in the air when she realized that she had still a few words left snagged in her throat. But then she was always able to conclude her sentences, even the most painful ones. Singing, happy, I think of you and I smile. I breathe and it's your breath in mine, over my face, your mouth, father-like, almost shy, around me your arms, taking me. I have got mad. I stopped people in the street. I talked to the parking valet. I went through the kitchen. I talked to people dining. And police stopped me and I explained I need her. I will die without her. Nobody believes me, but I will die without her. I love you like I never loved. Yes, Chiara, thank you. You're right. I'll make a phone call and I'm off. She waited for an extra second, as if she were about to say something. Then she had a second thought and withdrew to her gloomy room. Jacopo picked up the receiver and dialed her mother's house in Albarella.
Hello?
Hello, ma'am. I've been calling for you for days. You never home. I was worried sick. I'm 84 years old, lady, and I'm not about to start owing explanation to my son as to what I do or don't. It's not that. You could at least ring me up every once in a while. I did. I called my Mattia yesterday. Didn't he tell you? What do you expect a 9 years old to tell me? Almost 9. In any case, stop being all over me. I'm perfectly fine. Just slightly hard of hearing, but I'm fine. All right, good. I'm fine too, if that is of any interest to you. Don't be a child, Jacopo, and let me off the phone. Gina is waiting for me for a game of burraco. Did you buy groceries, Mom? Don't forget, I asked Alessandro to deliver them home for you. Please stop fussing. I'm entirely able to take care of myself. Okay, Mom. Talk to you later. Bye. He had the impression that the receiver had been hung up with a dash of irritation. God, I'm in a bad mood, he thought. He suddenly got up, slipped his jacket on, and looked inside his briefcase. There was his keys. He flung them up and caught them in midair. I'll drive my man's beat-up car, he thought out loud. He then took Rossini's paper and crammed them in the briefcase, said goodbye to Chiara, and headed at the door, passing to Giovanna's office. Giovanna was standing at the end of the room, looking towards the window, her back towards him, a back so frail and slender that looked like it belonged to a little girl. She was speaking softly on her cell phone. He knocked on the door frame, and she had a start as she turned around to face him. I'm off, going to have a chat with your dad. She covered the receiver with one hand, nodded, and her cheeks flushed in a soft watercolor red hue. Or so it seemed to him. She mouthed a half-whispered goodbye, turned again to face the window, and brought the receiver back to her left ear, but said nothing. Her shoulders raised imperceptibly, as if she were filling her lungs with air. Then a faint sigh seeped out, reluctantly clouding the window glass for a brief moment. Giovanna stood silent, holding her phone tight against her ear. Jacopo felt a rush of blood to the head, but couldn't help it. He crossed the hall, heading to the front door, opened it and slammed it hard behind him. It felt as if had set the walls of the entire building quaking as he walked off. A smidgen satisfaction. Hey, are you crazy? I received your message just now. I have not barricaded myself in the house. I'm coming just now. Oh, so you're not at home? Didn't you say you were going to have lunch at home? Her voice echoed, as if recollecting against empty walls. I changed my mind. We went out to lunch with people from work. I'm on my way, so wait for me inside the cafe. I don't like it for you to stand outside, even if it is only 2 p.m., and it may rain. I'm not standing outside. What do you mean you're not outside? I had somebody let me in. How the hell did you do that? I'm on your landing. I was so mad with you, I let it all out on your door. I kicked it. What did you say? It's a sturdy one, don't worry. Armored door. Didn't get a scratch. Maybe a bit of mud. No major damages. You kicked the door to my house? He wanted to laugh. An uncontrollable impulse to laugh out loud. He imagined her standing on his landing, all worked up and kicking the door, convinced he was barricading inside. How fast is that? He thought. And how did she manage to get in? He was trying hard not to laugh. All right, I'm on my way. Wait for me. Don't move, I'm coming. She answered with a feeble okay and hung it up. When he walked into the building, the stairway light was off. She left, was his immediate thought. He turned the stairway light on and climbed the stairs 2 steps at a time. Once he got to the 3rd landing, he saw she wasn't there. He grumbled, took his keys. As he inserted the key in the lock, he saw her sitting at the top of the last flight of stairs, her iPod on, her eyes aflame, her hair ruffled, and a beautiful smile curling her lips. He stopped, surprised, and looked at her, relieved. She smiled back. "See? No scratches. The door is fine." He bent over, pretending to examine the state of his door, while with the corner of his eye he saw her getting up, descending cautiously every step, and then stop. Still, you shouldn't go around kicking doors. And why did you want to kick it down, by the way?" "Well, I just thought you were inside. You—" Her hands rotated in the air. They kept leaping up and down in the air. "Yes?" he said, turning the key in the lock and swinging the door open. She stood still in the doorway. He walked in. He saw that she hadn't moved. He leaned out of the door, turned his face towards her, who kept stock still, hesitant to step down the last few steps. He asked her, "What is gonna be? In or out? I mean?" She sighed, brought her hands to stay still, and stepped down. "I'm sorry for the door," she whispered. He extended his arm and wrapped it around her shoulder. Jacopo took her inside and closed the door gently behind them. Translation from Italian by Iris Cartia. Original music by Massimo Moretti for Maxmore Music. Post-production editing by Gina Lee. All mistakes are mine. If you want to see pictures of making of and life in Italy, please follow me, Nina J. Course, on Instagram and LinkedIn.